Welcome back to Entrepreneur Country TV and good morning. We have a special guest in Andy Hart of Hearst Magazine this morning. We're going to take you through the week in review and a couple of anecdotes to help you understand how it all fits together. So when was the last time that you were in a black cab? Well, me neither. But occasionally, actually, I'm coming out of a meeting in the city or whatever, and I don't have time to Uber or call Addison Lee, so I find myself in a black cab. And the last time I did so, I started talking to the remarkably friendly black cab driver, who after he found that I was working with startups, he said to me, "Ma'am, do you think this Uber stuff is here to stay?" And I caught myself because my immediate reaction was to smile, if not laugh. But I said to him, "You know what? I think it is." And it reminded me of what Carlota Perez, the Venezuelan economist, whose theory of disruptive technology and adoption imbues a lot of our thinking on ecosystem economics at Ariadne Capital. What Carlota says is that there's a 60 to 80-year cycle. The same thing happens every time. And she's looked at the past 300 years for those moments of disruptive technology which kicks everything off. The steam engine, the combustion engine, the microprocessor. And the difference between the 60 and the 80 years is actually whether or not prosperity rips through society after 60 years, or whether a couple of billionaires get wealthy. Now, if you care as I do about whether society does get more prosperous, you're interested in the 60-year cycle. And what that means is that society needs to have a proper, robust debate. It does actually matter whether or not the black cab driver understands that this Uber stuff is here to stay. Whether or not he or she feels empowered by digital technology and the changes to his personal business model and the options available to him in society, whether or not he feels that he can be an economic actor or he feels that actually society is run by a series of mechanisms which are beyond his control. That's what we're doing here with Entrepreneur Country. We're leading that debate, not just for the venture capitalists of us, not just for the technology entrepreneurs or the people running corporations. We're actually having a debate with everybody, including that black cab driver, that needs to understand not only is that Uber stuff here to stay, but it's actually good and it's actually driving prosperity. We have a special guest for you this morning. His name is Andy Hart. He is the Chief Revenue Officer of Hearst Magazine. I've known Andy for nearly 20 years, all the way back to Sunday Business, and through many media and technology businesses since then. Last week, you heard Sherry Roberts, the founder and CEO of The Longest Stay, talking about shoppable content, talking about publishers who are looking for an opportunity to retail some of their content. Hearst is a perfect example of a very successful publishing company which is exploring new ways to monetize their content.
I work in Hearst Magazines International, so that means I have responsibility for all revenues, excluding subscription revenues, across the globe, excluding the United States. And I also have responsibility for managing the relationships with global accounts. One of my initial concerns when Hearst approached me was that they would be too embedded in magazine culture, and magazine culture being print culture. But I quickly learned that Hearst were redefining what a magazine means. What Hearst has realized when it comes to digital platforms, that all content is created equally if you have very clear editorial standards. And we're seeing amazing results, for example, on social media, where we run an article that could be editorial, could be commercial, branded content, pseudo-native, that's wrapped in a brand like Elle or Esquire or Cosmo. We get up to 50 times more engagement than when the site itself, whether that's a Facebook or a Snapchat, produces content. And that's a big shift. I mean, there's always been advertorials in magazines, but this is saying that actually we believe that commercially driven content is as powerful and credible as editorial content. But our strategy doesn't just stop at magazine production, doesn't just stop at magazine 3.0 distribution. We also invest in some of the more exciting digital platforms out there. For example, Vice, BuzzFeed, Refinery29, Complex. We're looking for great learnings and investments, and we're very aggressive in that area. And we also have a ventures arm, which is in it for the money, that will invest in many smaller and faster moving and earlier stage ventures. This partnership between media and tech has been phenomenal. Media provides not only distribution, but real engagement, content, entertainment, information, education to all people. Tech is the enabler. A lot of tech companies actually see themselves upside down, or as the French would say, à l'envers, where they think that actually it's the tech first that is the engaging tool. But of course the tech is the enabler. Great content really changes the way that people think about themselves and lives, and they need to concentrate, and we need to get that information across to them. So I hope 2016 is a year of concentration.
In almost any situation, you have an opportunity to see glass half full, glass half empty, to see the opportunities or to focus merely on the problems. We can say that Europe has no growth story, or we can say that, wow, a lot of new venture capital firms have been founded recently. Isn't that great? Well, I happen to see that what happens in the boardrooms of corporate Europe and the venture capital and startup communities are really just opposite sides of the same problem. Where is that growth story in Europe, and what's going to drive it? Actually, as we've said before, it matters whether or not these large non-technology businesses become platforms and engage with that application economy, which is backed by the venture capital industry. Applications, platforms, infrastructure. The model for winning is whether or not those companies become platforms and organize the economics of their ecosystem. If we continue in this model of the European venture capitalists just really backing the best and the brightest and figuring out which US technology firm in Palo Alto to sell them to, if that's the only play in the playbook, then the value creation will shift to Palo Alto irreparably. The way to create the ecosystems in Europe is not just to have a big startup fest in different European cities, but it is to engineer connections, communications, collaboration, and a correlation between what happens with corporate Europe and what happens with startup Europe. That's why Ariadne Capital has addressed that opportunity with our Ecosystem Economics Fund 1. It's a £150 million fund with disruptive economics, which you know we like if you've been paying attention. We're charging only a 1% management fee instead of 2%. We're giving limited partners in our fund a 3x free co-investment, which means for every pound you put in, you get 3 extra pounds to invest with no fees attached. 50% of the management fee. It's disruptive, it's crazy, but it's the way to get the big money backing the opportunity, which is both sides of the problem addressed to create a growth story in Europe. Thanks for tuning in to Entrepreneur Country TV. We look forward to seeing you next week, and remember to share this with your network.